Hi, my name is Jennifer, and this is my project on how technology impacts language development. I will be looking at specific ways technology can enhance and affect language development in children. In this presentation, I will be discussing my introduction to the topic, background information, my research context, methods used, my findings after my research, suggested actions I have for this topic, and my reference slide at the end. So currently, I am in the Bachelor of Education program at Mount Royal University, minoring in teaching English as a second language. I've always been very interested in language development, and I have a background in French and German. My dad's first language is German, and going into grade 1, he knew only minimal English, resulting in failing the grade. He always expressed how not only did he hate getting held back, but also how hard it was for him socially seeing his peers go on and not really building any solid relationships within his grade, and how academically he really struggled just because of that language barrier. So now being 2013, we have so many different programs and teachers' assistants to assist with English language learners, and now technology is making a mark in the school system. So this gave me my topic idea to investigate English language learners and how technology can be integrated into their language development. Then also, how could this be transferred to the language development in non-ELLs? So after developing my topic, I decided to start with talking to my teaching English as a second language professor. And in doing that, I quickly found out that technology has a very minimal place with teaching ELLs. So I will elaborate on that later on in my findings. But due to this, I really had to change the course of my research and focus on the impact and use for technology with first language development. And then thinking of this, I thought, well, what impact does home life play? So what are the roles of the parent, and how can this be transferred into the classroom? So from this, I was able to move forward with my research and continue my findings. So to begin my research, I started with looking on reliable websites to get some kind of background knowledge. I also looked to my education colleagues for feedback. I was able to get in contact with my volunteer partner teachers from my volunteer experience with the Mount Royal University placement. I talked with my teaching English as a second language professor, and also was able to get in contact and get some good feedback from my linguistics professor. The methods that I used in order to conduct my research was a Google Docs survey sent out to all of the education students, a Facebook survey, which I used with my personal communications of parents. I emailed and received teacher feedback, and again, my background research was completed using reliable websites. So my findings for the education survey were as followed. Primarily, students are finding within their volunteer placements that pronunciation is the #1 characteristic that is affected by the use of technology, followed by all literacy skills, so reading and writing. People within the education program did find that technology has a valuable place in developing language, such as creating stories with students, so creating a digital story online and having the students speak over it, and then you can play it back with the student. They can hear themselves and how they're speaking, and you can also use it to document the student's progress, to complete any research for the student, to do Dragon Speak, and then also incorporate Braille with that as well. The education students at Mount Royal University also felt that technology is primarily used as a research aid, motivation for the students as a reward, and the student can really take responsibility for his or her own learning. Now, the kind of trick to this is making sure that there is a balance between really utilizing and developing literacy and language skills and incorporating technology, because not everything can be done solely with technology. And finally, really allowing technology to empower knowledge within the students, not always looking at it as such a negative thing as we sometimes tend to do, but really getting involved, playing around with things, and testing out what works. The findings for the teacher feedback, firstly, with my professor Katie Crossman, who is experienced in teaching English as a second language. She explained that there is limited place for technology in the ELL classroom setting due to cultural differences, their different learning experiences, educational structure, and development of their country. So this is mostly tied to young beginner ELLs, which are benchmark 1. The explanation for this, for example, would be a child from China is used to direct teaching and may find incorporating technology into the curriculum too different, and it would be difficult for them to expand on their vocabulary or enhance their English pronunciation based on technology. In addition, another example would be a child who is a refugee may not have enough of an educational background or be experienced with technology enough to be successful with such modern ways of teaching. And also, if you had a full ELL classroom, it would be difficult to cater to all of the different diverse backgrounds of your students. The second teacher I spoke with is an FSL teacher in high school, and she said that she absolutely loved using technology to elaborate on pronunciation and vocabulary development. She uses PowerPoint and presentations to deliver vocabulary to the students, and students would also use these presentations to deliver all of their knowledge. And she would also record their presentations on her iPhone and email it to them and keep it as documentation for what kind of vocabulary they're using in the pronunciation that they have. She would use YouTube also within the classroom setting in order to bring in cultural classes, which aids in language development. Finally, the findings that I found with the parents were quite broad. So I originally asked just what type of technology is used with their children within their home, and various technologies were used. So LeapPads, LeapFrogs, iPads, iPods, just basic computer, video games, and television. The most general feedback I got is it, again, comes down to balance and proper supervision. So making sure that the parent is facilitating a proper learning environment with the technology that they're using, and not just allowing their children to play meaningless video games for hours on end, but actually having a goal and a purpose for everything that they're doing. And then coming back to balance, just ensuring that, yes, we might rely on technology as support, but at the end of the day, we still need to ensure that we sit down with our child, that they are reading to the parent, and that the parent is reading to them. And one parent actually has her son involved in speech therapy. And she had said, even though she uses a lot of different programs, iPad apps and whatnot to develop his language and his literacy skills, she finds that the best correction is verbal on-the-spot correction. So when he's mispronouncing something or his language and vocabulary isn't exactly where it needs to be, having that correction on the spot verbally is the best way he's learning. So the reason that technology seems to have more of a place in first language acquisition is because first and second languages are acquired very differently. So there are many contributing factors to this theory, including environment, parents, peers, and age, which can affect development. So with your first language, you're exposed to it from birth. You have many opportunities for communication, listening, and feedback. Really, there is a 100% success rate with acquiring your first language. Everyone's going to do it. The only exceptions to this would be specific disabilities and feral children, where due to severe abuse and neglect, children don't acquire their language by puberty, and then their first language will never be acquired. But second languages really don't work the same way. So the environment that you're in really isn't natural at home, and any learning or feedback is generally coming from school. Being older is definitely harder because the brain begins to focus on many different things academically. So you're not a very young child really only focusing on being able to communicate your needs and listen to others. Your focus is communication, but meanwhile, you're also dealing with all of these different subjects that you need to be acquiring academically, and then also having an exterior life if you have any extracurricular activities. So your brain is definitely working on a lot more when acquiring your second language. So there are also other factors to consider, such as motivation, the time that you have, and just strictly individual competency, as not every person is as successful as acquiring a second language as another. Now, in the classroom, this is important because students all have different native language backgrounds, which can make acquiring a second language a lot harder. So certain languages have certain grammatical rules, and you can do kind of a transfer of knowledge from your native language to your second language. But having students with a variety of different native languages, it's going to be a lot harder to bridge those gaps and make those transitions. So really utilizing technology in the classroom to develop a second language in a specific ELL classroom at such a rapid rate, it's going to be very, very challenging because you're still putting focus on academic development, and to really integrate that technology just on language development is going to be quite challenging. So in summary, first and second languages vary greatly in how they are acquired. So just like I previously described in the last slide, there's a significant difference in how people acquire a second language versus a first, and that really impacts the use of technology with second language development. So because first language acquisition is a natural process with a natural learning environment, it's a lot easier to integrate technology and have technology assist with first language acquisition. Using technology with second language acquisition is specific to the classroom, as like in my findings with my FSL classroom teacher, technology was very, very successful in the classroom. But with an ELL teacher having an entire class of ELLs from all different cultures and native languages, it could be very challenging in order to have technology be effective in language development. Moving further, balance of technology is key within the classroom. You want to ensure as a teacher you're not using technology out of convenience or because the students really don't want to do anything else. You need to make sure that technology is being used in a proper way to actually facilitate learning and not just out of simple convenience. So my suggested actions from my findings are to ensure that we're utilizing technology properly for language development. Again, not using it out of convenience. Awareness is so important, making sure that we know our students, we know what they're capable of, we know their background, and we're accommodating our lessons to them. Thirdly, we need to plan appropriately. We need to not only make sure that we're planning technology lesson plans, but we need to know what the goal and what the expected outcome is going to be for our students. We need to adjust to our students, make sure we know them. Again, I can't say this enough, and ensure that they are developing and they are where they need to be. So my personal references, firstly, is Katie Crossman, my teaching English as a second language professor. Christine Dennis, who is a grade 2 teacher. She has taught for about 30 years. She actually taught grade 2 when I was in grade 2, and I was fortunate enough to have her as a partner teacher. Leanne Fitzpatrick, who is an FSL teacher. I discussed with the Mount Royal University education students, and then I did have the personal communication of my friends who are parents.